A big question of our time is how to fundamentally shift these trajectories that we're on when it comes to climate change, biodiversity loss, social injustices. And so this concept of transformative change allows us to orient and really focus on these fundamental system-wide shifts. But many people have very different ideas of what is transformative or not, both what we should be focusing on and how we should pursue it. So this led us to spark this process within Wageningen University and to think about how people are approaching the connection between research and transformative societal change in very different ways. And that's led to the identification of 4 different ways of working, which we think are especially important. But we really want to open up this conversation, and we invite you to reflect with us about what is the role of research in sparking transformative change.
Pluralizing means, okay, can we acknowledge that there are plural ways of knowing things and plural ways of doing research? And if you bring people together from different paradigms, from different perspectives, that they can come together and have a conversation. I'm interested in how tourism helps us to remember the history of slavery, heritage in 3 countries. It's not so much tourism studies only, it's also about economic studies, about development studies, about historical studies. The Elmina Castle, it wasn't only about slavery, it was also about trade, it was also about colonial government. So how do we understand this specific side, recognizing that there are multiple lenses to be shown on a certain phenomenon?
When we saw the invitation of the Rockefeller Foundation to write an inspiring vision for a healthy and regenerative food system, we immediately thought, we have to do this together with the people who are actually producing food, so with the farmers. What we need to do is to sit together with a large group of stakeholders that live or work in a specific region, and then design how you want that region to look like. Everyone is part of the food system. So everyone should also be part of the change towards an improved food system. So farmers, consumers, the industry, policymakers, but also funding organizations. So everyone has its role.
Conservation often becomes depoliticized. It often becomes simplified around one local area, one specific species, one specific group of people around a species. And solutions therefore become quite technical. So for example, putting in more fencing. Conservation is inherently deeply political, and what I mean by that is that there's always certain people who are very powerful in the situation and certain people that are often marginalized in the situation. And it's often the powerful people like governments, big conservation organizations who are making the decisions about conservation. What transformative change really means is actually shaking up the system. So really kind of thinking about how can we do things differently? How can we challenge dominant power structures? How can we challenge the way in which we know about nature and research nature and understand nature?
We often look for case studies from all over the world. We have case studies in textbooks. And I always think, what a shame. You know, the whole sustainability puzzle is right on our footsteps. Why don't we dive into our local environment, immerse ourselves, get to know where we are, where we live, and how we are affected and nudged sometimes into doing things that we may not want to be doing. And another point that is also important about working using the local environment as a starting point for teaching, education, capacity building, and for research is that it offers opportunities to come up with your own actions and interventions which you can monitor and measure and see how these interventions actually make a difference. Critical there is also that we always think about how are the issues that we experience in our local environment nested in the wider global world.
The interesting thing is that we noticed a massive difference between people's visions of what they think they should be doing and what they're actually doing. And so it's really important to focus on how to create more enabling spaces around this kind of research.
Competitive funding forces researchers to conform their research in a way, because in order to be competitive, there are standards that you have to meet. So you need to kind of tailor your research in ways that conform to these standards. But if there is less competition for funding, if there is a way in which research can be, everyone gets a certain seed fund to go and do research, I think that can boost transformative research.
I think what we now do is indeed we invite farmers, for example, and ask them about the knowledge, but that's not co-creation. Before you think what the topic will be, you start discussing with these people. So what do you want us to research for the future?
In policy terms, it's important to provide space. Space for exploration, space for curiosity, space for investigation, space for reflection, space for local issues to come into the curriculum.
I think it's really important that the university provides training for staff and students to really develop these critical skills to do research in transformative ways, working with society, to pluralize, to empower, to politicize, and to embed research in society.